This isn't a dystopia warning, this is my own personal experience of trying to access A&E services and my own personal insight into what it's like in hospitals at the moment. I've been terrified about needing A&E services in recent years. Even before the pandemic, I had to call 999 only to find the line engaged or ringing for extended periods of time. After making videos for about 4 years about government negligence and corruption and the shocking failings, I know off the top of my head precisely how bad it is. I follow medical professionals that say it's like working in a field hospital to work in the NHS at the moment. I know that ambulances aren't turning up. I know off the top of my head that it's an 1.5 hour wait for a heart attack via ambulance if they even turn up at all. My own nan was told it'd be 8 hours on the floor of her bathroom. Then obviously you read the story about the mother of two, 39 years old, under a pile of coats she was found in a waiting room. She died of a brain aneurysm. Then there's also the part of yourself that thinks, well, is it severe enough to go? I've lived with a chronic pain condition since I was 14, which is suspected endometriosis, but it's a whole other story about why I've not been diagnosed properly with that or received any real support with it. But I've been on a waiting list for months now, many months, for a scan. My pain has been worse, significantly worse over the last month. That's just the pain, you know. There's lots of other really horrible symptoms too, which I won't go into, but because it presents in the lower right, I have to rule out appendicitis. You can only do that with proper tests and a scan, right? So A&E's the only way to get that if you're languishing on a waiting list with the other 8 million people in this country. I weighed up whether or not to go because it's a lonely, isolating experience. I didn't have anyone to go with me. Yeah, it's not nice. But because the pain was so severe that it was hurting just to walk or to sit down, I thought I have to get this checked out on one way or another and at least see what it's like down there, you know. I fully anticipated it being bad, and I was not wrong. The woman on the front desk looked visibly tired, stressed out. I'm not surprised because the waiting room was chaos. There were people bleeding. There were a couple of people that looked unconscious, which I was hoping were asleep. There was a little baby, red in the face, on the lap of its frightened mother, screaming in a high-pitched wail. You know, the kind of wail where you know that something's really not right. There were people sitting around the chairs on the floor. Some were laying on the floor. There were ambulances parked up outside the hospital. People looked sick and worried and scared and in pain. And because I could stand and could just about walk, you know, I felt like I shouldn't be there. I asked how long it was going to be, and it was like a 4 hour, 5 hour wait just to be triaged. Then you've got the added impact of knowing that gynecological conditions are often dismissed. So I could have waited all that time just to be turned around anyway and told to go home with some painkillers without even having a scan or blood tests, you know. That has happened before. Then there's also the added worry that you don't really know what's going on. What if something's ruptured this time? What if it is appendicitis this time and you leave it and you know that you need to call an ambulance and it never fucking turns up? So I made the decision to just go home and just see what happens. Wait it out, see if it gets worse. Because I would have been in a position where I'd have been stuck sitting on the floor of a waiting room for many, many hours. I made eye contact with a woman that looked like as white as a sheet. I don't know what was wrong with her. And she told me she'd been there for 5 hours already. She looked worryingly ill, like worryingly. And it was chaos all around, like people were running backwards and forwards. And I actually thought to myself, if say that woman who looked like horribly ghostly pale had a heart attack or something, I didn't even know if there would be anyone there to come and get her. We pay our taxes for this and we get nothing in return for it. At least in other countries, you know, they pay high taxes, but everything just works. Nothing works anymore. I made a really angry video yesterday and I'd second guessed about whether or not to post it, because even I'm reaching a point at this point of just thinking, if people don't know this is what's happening by now, will they ever know? Will they keep pointing the finger at a brown person or an immigrant instead of the cokehead psychopaths running this country into the ground whilst profiting? And if they think another bunch of posh elitist schoolboys in reform are the answer with their mad maths and their mad economic plan that would make Truss's economy tanking look like a blip, then they're insane. It's just a con, mate. It's just a con. We deserve better than this. We deserve better than lying undignified on the floor of a hospital. I never had this in the late 90s and the early noughties when this pain first started, and I used to have to go for a checkup. I was in and out in hours. This shit didn't happen under the last government. NHS workers will attest to it. What I saw today was actually, it wasn't just scary, it was upsetting. Seeing people in pain, on their own, the worry on their faces, the apologetic look of the woman on reception who was doing her best. The decline is obvious everywhere, and I don't think it's too much to ask of people to take a look at the objective reality of what's around them and point the finger in the direction of those responsible for it, who only care about saving their own skin. They don't care about the fact that nurse who's been rushed off her feet trying to save lives for 14 hours is having to rely on a food bank to live, or paying excessive rents to a landlord. Tories won't do anything about it. They are the landlords. 8 million people on a waiting list alongside me. They make people out to be scroungers if they can't work while suffering with a chronic condition, waiting for mental health support, or just suffering. The myriad consequences of living under one of the most corrupt governments we've ever known. Weighed up whether or not to make this video, but having seen for myself the stuff that I've been trying to impart to other people, I felt like I had to. 500 people plus are dying a week under this government, avoidable deaths because of a lack of NHS services and staffing. They've just given themselves a pay rise, a huge pay rise, whilst the people that are there to save our lives are given peanuts. People don't have to shout it from the rooftops, but at least vote them out. This won't get better. It's the only way we can stop paying them. You're paying for this. You're paying them to put us through this. If nothing else, use your vote to stop paying for them.